World Hour on Channel Africa.
All right, at a time when the global push for clean energy is accelerating, Managing Director of Menar Vuslat Bayoglu says Africa must not blindly adopt timelines set by developed nations whose energy systems are far more advanced and widely accessible. Speaking at the Coal and Energy Transition Day in Johannesburg, South Africa, Vuslat emphasized the need for an energy roadmap that reflects Africa's own realities, including its developmental needs and energy access gaps. He joins us now to unpack what a fair and foreseeable energy transition could look like for the African continent. Vuslat, good evening and welcome to Channel Africa.
Good evening, Innocent. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thank you so much for making the time. You attended today the Energy and Coal Conference. You have argued earlier that Africa should not follow the same energy transition pace as developed nations. What would a more realistic timeline for Africa look like, in your view, when it comes to the issue that has to do with just energy transition?
I think every country has its own recipe for the energy solution, for the energy needs. If you look at like sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, we have DRC, which is very rich in hydropower. The Inga River has got potential more than 42,000 megawatt. They're only utilizing like 1,775 megawatt of that capacity. So DRC's all the power needs can be sorted with a hydro project, large hydro project or projects on Inga River. So when you come to Zambia, Zambia produces a lot of power from coal. They have coal available, and they recently actually extended one of the power stations, and they built another unit, which was one of the few that was financed recently in Africa. If you go to Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe has got coal, and they produce power from coal, and they can actually do more because they've got really good quality coal in Zimbabwe. If you go to Mozambique, they've got coal, they've got hydro capacity, they also have gas. So they're quite rich in resources, energy resources. And if you go to Kenya, for instance, they've got geothermal, which is a renewable energy resource, clean energy, and they're rich in that one, in that resource. So they can, the geothermal resource plays an important role in Kenya's energy system. If you go to Nigeria, Nigeria is like, it's a massive population. The biggest population in Africa. They only have 14,000 megawatt installed power. They've got massive gas and oil resources, but they have very little energy production capacity. If you come to South Africa, which is the largest capacity in terms of installed power capacity, we've got 70,000 megawatt installed capacity, which some of it is not used at the moment for different reasons, grid access and for other reasons. But we only have like 30,000 megawatt used in South Africa, and that's one of the largest in the African continent. So every country has its own solution for their energy needs. Like to add again, like Botswana, for instance, they have coal and they are burning coal and they're making coal power from coal. Namibia doesn't have coal. They are using diesel to generate power. So we cannot have one recipe for all countries, and that's actually the biggest, I think, challenge in the world. Like, because International Energy Agency is trying to kind of like guide all the countries and say, okay, look, everybody should go from fossil fuel power capacity to renewable energy power capacity with battery storage. I think it's a good narrative, but it's not realistic at all, and we saw that it didn't work. So for Africa, to answer your question, every country is going to have their own solution for their power needs, and every country is going to use every form of power to generate so that they can electrify everywhere. They can create urban areas so that the countries in the continent develop faster.
Yeah, indeed, Vuslat, you and I can agree that It's not realistic, but it's backed by a lot of money. But what are the risks of rushing the transition away from coal in countries that are still dependent heavily on for job and energy?
Look, South Africa is the the most obvious example for that, and it is very dangerous to do that because our load shedding history started in 2008, and since then we had some serious periods where we had really stage 6, stage 7 kind of load shedding times. And at some point, the previous CEO of Eskom was telling the nation that there might be a blackout. And the ironic part is the minute he left, the new guys came in, and then a month later there was no load shedding. So it's actually very interesting thing to kind of to think about, because they were also talking about sabotaging the power stations at that time. Now, people started thinking, okay, was actually the management sabotaging the power stations because they were literally not using the capacity. So that situation caused massive havoc in South Africa because people couldn't have power at home in the mornings. When they go home after work, they didn't have power, so they couldn't bath, they couldn't have coffee, they couldn't wash. I mean, it was a chaos. And we realized that we can't really do anything, we can't really have anything like this again. So I think that's the kind of practically experienced case. We all experienced that people suffered because we didn't have power, and we don't want to go back to that period. So that's the first thing. The second thing is obviously it has got a massive impact on the economy. The restaurants in the central areas in Johannesburg, in Durban, in Cape Town, they couldn't run properly because they didn't have power, and people's jobs were affected. It was actually really bad for the economy of the country. Hence, if we make a decision where we change the source of energy, let's say from coal to renewable energy, and if it doesn't work, which is the case in Western Europe, in Portugal, in Spain, in Holland, and in Germany, they had their load shedding challenges as well, like South Africa had, and it was purely because of rushing from base load capacity to intermittent capacity, which is wind and solar mainly. So I think we should learn from these countries' lessons, and we should not rush into something that's not tested, because currently what is tested did not work. I mean, if you just look at Germany, such a manufacturing giant, they couldn't survive without Russian gas, because the whole system was designed to have renewables plus Russian gas. And without Russian gas, they were in trouble, and then they ended up paying ridiculously high prices for the gas, and the economy suffered because of that. So, we can't have the similar situation in South Africa because we don't have budget for these kind of things. So Germany is a developed nation. South Africa is a developing nation, and we've got different challenges. We've got massive gap between rich and poor in this country, and we also have a serious amount of unemployed people, especially among youth. So our challenges and Germany's, Denmark's, Spain's challenges are different. So they can't give me the same recipe for different sicknesses.
Indeed, our challenges.
Hence, I'm saying we can't rush into something that's not going to work for South Africa or for any country that's going to go from fossil fuel power to renewable energy.
Yeah, indeed, our challenges are different. You're quite correct. In fact, a research by the Kahora Basa in Mozambique shows that South Africa, the region is short with around 10,000 megawatts of electricity. And we do know now that they're partnering with the World Bank to resuscitate Kaura Bassa. But in your view, how do you balance then the environmental concerns with Africa's pressing needs for industrialization, for an energy access?
So look, everything that we do, like let's say construction or an infrastructure investment or power capacity that's built, has got a carbon footprint. So that's a reality. And everything that we do is actually governed by the regulations of the state wherever we are living. Like in the case of South Africa, for instance, to build a power station, you need to get an environmental impact assessment approved by the Department of Environmental Affairs. And if you're using water, the Department of Water Affairs needs to give you a water use license. So it's not like, when you want to do something, you just go and do it. It doesn't work like that. Like you can't go and build something on a wetland. They won't allow you to do that because technically it's wrong and environmentally it's wrong. So there are systems in place to deal with the environmental concerns, environmental challenges. I think the biggest challenge here is like the carbon emissions. So there are carbon emissions from gas, coal, and mainly these two, and diesel, obviously, these three sources of energy. And countries like China and India are dealing with these challenges, or the carbon emissions. They are trying to minimize it with the new technologies that's used to burn. When you're burning these energy resources, then you create some mechanism in the chimney so that you capture the bad gases, your SOxes or NOxes, all those gases can be captured. So there are ways and means of dealing with the air pollution that's coming out of fossil fuels power stations. Yeah. If we are really serious about talking a balanced approach, okay. But if you're having a cult mentality, you're saying, no, don't talk about coal. We are not going to touch coal or diesel or gas. We are just going to do what is right, and that's wind and solar. Then I tell those people, good luck. Go and show the world how you're going to power a nation, an industrial nation, with solar panels and windmills.
Yeah, and in the afternoon, you and I spoke about some of the pathways for clean coal technologies. Do you believe that the continent has the capabilities to basically put together those technologies, and what should international partners play in supporting Africa's unique transition, particularly in financing and technological transfer?
Look, definitely, like I earlier said, in Zambia, for instance, they recently financed a new coal-fired power station, and they built it. It's called Mamba Power Station. It's next to Mamba Colliery, okay? And I think investors in the world, in different parts of the world, be it China, be it Europe, be it United States, they're all open to different ideas. And I think they know very well that there is a massive potential in Africa. And I know, like I follow what's happening, for instance, for the hydropower capacity that can be built on Inga. Okay, if they can sort out, the DRC government can solve their own challenges, that capacity can be unlocked. And imagine the copper that they're producing in DRC and smelting in DRC will be like using completely clean energy. So it's not only coal or gas-fired power capacity, but also renewable energy capacity is actually offering a lot of opportunities for the financial institutions, for the investors, for the entrepreneurs in different parts of the world. I think the biggest challenge in Africa is regulating these things, because I think if they have the right regulations, all these countries will attract many investors, and they will solve their power challenges at very, very competitive prices. I know like a lot of pension funds are interested in these kind of investments because they're long term and they're guaranteed by the governments. But most of the African countries are having issues with their internal policy making, internal regulations, and they eventually end up like not allowing the private investors to come into their country and build capacity for different types of power. So I think there are hungry investors waiting to build power capacity in different parts of Africa.
Yeah, speaking about hungry investors, just before I let you go, Vuslat, what policy shifts or investment are most urgent to ensure Africa isn't left behind in the global transition?
You know, maybe, Innocent, what I'm going to say is going to be a bit philosophical, but I can justify what I'm going to say now, and I hope it's not going to be controversial. But the biggest challenge that I see I visited many African countries, and I looked at different opportunities in different countries, be it East Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, or North Africa. When an investor comes and tries to make a deal with the government, any government, okay, eventually what happens is like, are these guys having some colonial mindset? Are they going to do the similar things that happened in the past? I think that mindset stops certain people moving forward. That's one important challenge. We have to accept it. This is my perception. The second one is these countries, there are some countries which are actually struggling because of the corruption. So when an investor approaches, let's say, building a geothermal capacity or hydro capacity, then they end up like with the hands of some government officials, and they end up like doing funny things, and that actually deters the investors to go and invest in that country, because nobody wants to start a relationship like that, and that will end up like serving that country. I think these two things are critical, and if the African countries' governments are confident enough and they say, okay, we will regulate and we will partner with the private sector, we'll be part of it, we'll make money out of power generation, and then we will power the nation at a cheap power, then they can be very successful. But the mindset, unfortunately, is not there, because I don't believe that states should be producing power. I think private sector should be producing power, and again, governments can be involved in these private sector initiatives, but government needs to regulate. So in other words, if investors are trying to make a ridiculous profit, then that should be stopped. So there must be tariffs which power companies can supply to the power to the households or businesses. It should be capped, and that's what government needs to play a role. Because let's say if somebody is producing power from hydro at 1 cent, one US cents a kilowatt hour, and then they're trying to sell it at 10 cents, that's a problem. If he's producing at 1 cent and selling it at 1.5 cents, which is 50% margin, it's more than enough for any private sector company, then that's good. But governments are not playing that role in many countries, hence they end up like not being able to solve their problem. Just to give you an example, for instance, Gabon is saying that by 2030, all the manganese that's produced in Gabon should be converted into ferromanganese, beneficiated. Okay, how do you do that? Where is the power going to come from?
Yeah.
What is the installed capacity of Gabon? And how much megawatt do you need to put up so that you can make 8 million tons of manganese and convert that to 4 million tons of ferromanganese? So when you say that it's a good thing, like people say, oh yeah, well, our president is doing the right thing, he's pushing the investors to invest in Gabon. But the reality is, it is not possible, because We are in 2025. In 5 years' time, how would you build all these power stations, and how are you going to get the resource? Are you going to burn gas? Are you going to burn coal? Are you going to burn diesel? Whatever you're going to burn, you need to decide about that, and then you need to invest in this power generation capacity. So the challenges are planning, and then again, not being confident about regulating the private sector and ending up like, okay, we rather don't get it. In the case of DRC, massive capacity, you go to Kinshasa, you smell the diesel. Why? Because they're using diesel generators in a country where there is the most generous river capacity that could be turned into hydropower is not used, and it's like it can compete with what Brazil has, but it's not used properly. So I think the biggest challenge is governments should be in a position to regulate, and they need to invest. They need to invite investors to deal with the power challenges. And again, every country has different recipe. We cannot apply one recipe to all the countries in Africa.
All right, Vuslat, for your time, I thank you.
Thank you very much.
There you have it, Managing Director of Menar Vuslat Bayoglu, talking to us there about the issues of energy and coal in the continent. That conversation brings us to exactly 21:48 Central African Time. This is Africa World Hour on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.